All right, welcome back. Good to be back working on the Giant ATX bike project. So, a couple things have happened since we've been gone. Not long has passed, but I did a couple things. So, what I did is I removed the the seat that I was using, this placeholder seat. This is a it's a Velo seat. Anyway, this was a 390 gram seat, relatively comfortable, but a lot of mass and too much cushion, too much cushion for me. I like a harder seat. So this was always just holding the place. But what I've done is I got my shipment of my $9 seat, which weighs 190 grams, which is incredibly light for a seat. Now, if you look at it, it's plastic. It doesn't look that comfortable, and it's got all these holes. I actually like this for a number of reasons. I like that it gives me extra ventilation. I'm a sweaty guy on the bike. I like the extra ventilation. It has a slight hollowed out section, which is kind of all the rage now in seats. Gives you that little bit of pressure relief. It's narrow. I like that as well. On the front end, it's very narrow. And even though it's plastic, it's hard to show you right here, but it's got a decent amount of flex. So even though there's not padding per se, it's actually really comfortable. When you first get on it for like the first 30 seconds, you're like, ooh, what am I getting myself into? But it actually, you settle in really nicely to it. And I've got this on my adventure bike. I've got this now, it'll be on my touring bike here, and I've also got this on my backup road bike. So I have this same exact saddle on 3 bikes, which I think is kind of a neat feature. First of all, it's a cheap seat to have a bunch of. And with saddles, the general idea is once you have something that you like and works for you, stick with it. And especially since it's $9, I get this straight from eBay, from free shipping from Taiwan or whatever, from China or Taiwan. Not even sure. This is made in Taiwan, but all of this is plastic with I think it's just aluminum rails. I'm not even sure. I don't think they're not titanium or anything special. But 190 grams for a seat, you'd be hard pressed to spend. You could spend probably $200 for a full carbon fiber rails, and you'd be hard pressed to beat that on weight. You probably could get down to like 150, 160 grams on a seat, but for 5% of the cost, you've got a pretty nice feature here, and I like it. And I've got it now set up for the geometry. 2 other things I have done. I mounted on my shifters. So these are my Shimano Ultegra used triple shifters. All you have to do to mount these is what am I looking at? There's on the little rubber hood here. All you do is you flip that little bit up, and a 6mm hex key Allen wrench goes into there, into a little nut here, and that is what tightens on this little band clamp. So that you just loosen that off, you slide the shifter up into place, tighten it down on the band clamp, and then the only key thing there is to make sure that they're basically at the same height. So I had this down on the floor when I was doing it. I had it down on the floor, and I used an actual level, a carpentry level, a spirit level, as they say in the UK, to make sure that the tops of the hoods were the same level on each side. And conventional wisdom with road stuff is that when excuse me, when flush on the floor, the brake levers are conventionally sort of vertical. Again, that's a little bit personal preference. Some people want their hoods a little bit higher so they can get their hands and rest their wrists a little higher. That makes the brake stick out a little more. I'm pretty much a vertical guy, but it doesn't really matter. But I've got these in pretty good place now. Now that I have my crankset and pedals, my shifters, and my seat, I'm actually now able to mess around with my, to double check my dimensions of the cockpit and whatnot. One other thing I did, because I was able to check that out, is I went ahead and I added a spacer onto the headset that I didn't have before. So in order to do that, I had to loosen the top cap bolt. That's the quill stem adapter bolt. That's the thing that is pushing out inside of the head tube that's holding the whole stem apparatus on. So I loosened that, and all I did was just raise it out, added in this spacer, which is an aluminum 1 1/8 inch spacer, and I put this back on. Now this spacer, if I was doing it right, I would have a 1-inch spacer, because that's the diameter of the quill stem adapter at that point. So there is actually, I have this it's tightened, so it doesn't really matter, but technically it's the wrong size. And I probably should go back and get a 1 inch, some 1 inch spacers, especially if I might even raise it a little bit more. I have about another inch of play in there, so it's starting to look real awkward in this area, but whatever, as long as it's functional. But anyway, I tightened that back down, and now that little bit of that 1 centimeter raise is actually useful. It felt a lot more comfortable when I was just leaning on the shifters. I felt like, oh, this is much more like my normal, relaxed sort of endurance position that I like to have on the bike.